Calling all beings. Calling all beings.
Yeah! Can somebody give me an Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing, brother Nathan?
I should turn my mic on. That'll be better.
Yes,
I'm doing really well.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing well. It's great to be back on air with you again. I'm your host, DJ. You guys have known us since 2021 when we done invaded these airways, and we're talking about everything from Bigfoot, true crimes, consciousness, UFOs, paranormal. I mean, we can do the damn thing, man. And guess what? We're getting ready to have a cabbie reunion pretty soon. We're going to bring every former cabbie back, and they could say what they really didn't like about me. Actually, that would take too long. Debs, how are you this evening?
I'm doing wonderful. Happy Saturday, everybody.
Welcome back, my friend. And so tonight, you know, we're pretty excited about this because I was not aware of these folks, but all of us kind of know different people in the community. And when I asked Nathan, who do we need to have on? He said, Anthony and Sinead. He said, these guys are, I think the word could have been dope. I'm not sure.
Dopest.
The dopest.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of consumed some of their content and listened to them. And I'm finna get some education tonight. So
yes.
Without further ado, party people, put your hands together for Anthony and Sinead.
How's it going, guys?
Good.
I'm doing the whole program.
You can tell we have a packed studio audience today, so it's very exciting.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us on, guys. This is going to be exciting. Can't wait.
Yeah, great to be with you. DJ, do you mind if I do a quick little intro?
I guess, hold on. We just got somebody else that came in.
Yeah, bring her up.
Party people, put your hands together for Boston Beer.
Hi, happy Saturday.
What's up?
We needed one more. We couldn't handle you two just on our own.
We got to complete
Boston,
the squares, you know.
Yeah, Boston Beer is like, I can get it together even if I'm not feeling good. So here she is. She's a gamer from Boston. So anyway, welcome, Nathan. Take it away, please.
Yeah, so it's great to have you guys on. You're both part of a great show called Fire in the Cosmos, and I know, Anthony, that was initially kind of your brainchild, but Chenade, you got brought into the project, and we're working on it together. Anthony is I'll start with you. Anthony, you're connected to just, I feel like, everybody. If you see conferences and whatnot, Anthony's always in the photograph. He's either in the foreground or the background. He's like the Where's Waldo of ufology. He knows everybody. He's everywhere at all times, and he's just a great guy. So I know Anthony through Darren. Actually know Chenade through Darren as well. Our good friend Darren King, Exo Academian.
My man.
And he's the man. We'll have him back on soon, hopefully. And Anthony and I have had a chance to spend time together. We've meditated together. We've gone on a hike together. I've had dinner with the guy. He's a great guy, and I've always wanted to have him on the show. What's that?
We've slept in a yurt together.
We did sleep in a yurt together. That stays between us, Anthony.
Nathan's cheating on me. What?
That was one time. It was one time.
All right. Okay.
What happens in the yurt stays in the yurt. So anyway, it's been.
He's fired already.
If you're, what I like to say is that, if you're friends of Anthony, you're friends of mine, just like Olive Garden, when you're here, your family. So it's great to have Chenade with us as well. I couldn't do it in the accent. So DJ, maybe you can do the, when you hear your family, something like that. I don't know, I can't quite do it quite right, but.
Hey, when you're here, your family, Anthony, you know what I'm saying, right?
Exactly.
You're Italian. I'm Italian. Forget about it. Go ahead.
Forget about it. I love it. All right. So Chenade is the other half, the dynamic duo from Fire in the Cosmos. Chenade is an experiencer, as is Anthony. I forgot to mention that. Chenade brings a lot to the show. I love listening to your take, Chenade, on Fire in the Cosmos. It just your ability to analyze and pick apart stuff and chase the kind of tail of things that need to be talked about. It's so great. So really excited to have both of you guys on the show with us. I know you guys have heard of Calling All Beings. It's a crazy experience. So we hope you have a great time. We're here to have a great time, not just with you guys, but with those of the folks who decided to spend their time today and join us in the audience. So great to see all of you guys as well. Shout outs to our moderators. Looks like we've got Julie, Jules, and Captain Harris, and maybe DJ. Are there any other moderators I'm not catching up on? You let me know. But great to have everybody together. We're gonna have a good show, and let's get into it.
Great intro. Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was so enthusiastic, and I love all the clapping and the sound effects, and it's pretty awesome.
That's what we do. High octane is what the show's all about. And unlimited breadsticks. I forgot that.
Olive Garden has never made it to cab until tonight. This is the first time. Thank you, Nathan. That was
You're welcome. You're welcome.
That really just put me in the right mood. But now I have to focus on things I wanted to ask. So I'm kind of curious. So first of all, I believe that is one of you a medical professional with regard to psychology, something like that, or no? Am I right? No, neither of you are. Good, then we're okay. You're the only one, Deb, that we got to worry about. So with that, what drew the two of you together? How did this union come together?
Well, I'll let you do it. Go for it.
I usually start the story and then Anthony rounds it up. It's a great story. So what happened was I had tried some years ago to do a podcast because I'm not actually, it's sort of a weird thing for me a little bit to be on a podcast or to have been on podcasts at all. I used to work with Grant Cameron. He asked me to be a research and interview assistant with him. And I had this really big existential crisis where I was like, me on YouTube. I mean, I just never, ever thought that would ever going to happen. And I was not interested in it either. So I had the opportunity to do a podcast. I was interviewed and asked after the interview to do a podcast with this really lovely person. And I just thought, well, I seem to keep getting told that I should do a podcast. So I should just try this and see what's going to happen. Tried it out for about a year and a half. It just wasn't really working. Sometimes it gels, sometimes it doesn't. So I ended up backing away from that project. And then to me, it was just like, okay, did a podcast, tried it, done, finished. So I had no intentions at all of doing another podcast. Yet I do keep hearing, like, people keep saying to me, you really should do a podcast. You should do this. You should do this. And which is very nice. But, I wasn't really taking it that seriously. And then went to Contact in the Desert in May 2025. And I'm very good friends with Hakeem Isler, who's the founder of Psy Games. And so we had been texting each other saying, like, can't wait to see you. What time are you arriving? And we were arriving at almost the same time. So we agreed to meet at the front door of the hotel. And Anthony walks up. He already knew Hakeem. So Hakeem introduces us. Hakeem went off to do his own thing. This is the first night of contact. Anthony and I ended up talking for hours, like just hours and hours and hours. And we unbeknownst to each other, we were having the same thoughts about each other. And the thoughts were, oh, I really wish this person could do a podcast with me. This is like the perfect podcast host. But at that time, Anthony already had a podcast, had another podcast host. Yes, exactly. And they were in a situation where, they made this commitment. They were doing their best to make this podcast happen. But one of the things that Anthony and I discussed during our hours-long conversation that first night was what we really wanted to do as podcasters versus what our experience was, which wasn't quite feeling good to Anthony either. And so then we finished this long conversation feeling like, oh, wow, I just made this amazing new friend. We felt like we knew each other right away. It was that immediate feeling of familiarity, like, oh, I know you. I've met you before. So there was that wonderful feeling. And then also just a great connection. I just could see Anthony's character right away. He's just an absolutely wonderful person. So thoughtful, intelligent, warm-hearted, balanced. I just love him so much. And so that first night was like, wow, this person's awesome. Then the next morning, we were starting the day and Anthony was volunteering. So he had to be up early and he had this gigantic coffee. I always remember the coffee. It just looked enormous to me. So he came up all bleary eyed. We'd been up until 3:30 in the morning or something talking. And we had a telepathic moment because he came up and I could just tell from the expression on his face that something had happened. And so he says to me, Chenade, guess what? And I said, what? And he says, my podcast co-host just resigned that morning, like the night after.
Oh,
Yeah, like no precursor to this at all, no warning. He did not know this was coming. And so we're just looking at each other. He's looking at me and I'm looking at him and I'm like, Anthony, are you about to ask me to do a podcast with you? And he says, yes, I am. Do you want to? And I'm like, yes. So it just happened.
wow.
12 hours of meeting. Yeah.
Meant to be.
That is so awesome. And that is kind of like, just without going through the story, Nathan's brother, Justin, wrote a barefoot shoe blog back towards the end of my Air Force career around 2009. I started to read his blog because I wear a bunch of different types of barefoot shoes, not knowing that 11 years later, maybe that he would be my co-host. You know what I mean? On Calling All,
it's a small world.
On Calling All Beings. So yeah. And his brother still actually occasionally blogs when he comes upon new brands of barefoot or all natural zero drop shoes. So yeah, Justin and Nathan.
Nice.
Anyway,
We need to get him to be a show sponsor because we should cut him.
birthdayshoes.com.
That's
Everybody,
right, that's
birthday
right.
shoes.
All your minimalist footwear needs.
Yes.
But yeah, thanks Chenade for sharing that. Like we hit it off immediately, and I had some. I mean, I had a great thing going with my previous co-host to even get that podcast started. Initially, it was called Obliterate the Construct, and that started in December or January of 25. So like 6 months before I met Chenade. So we already had like a few episodes released, but I had a very specific vision for how I thought that these topics and these issues of the anomalous should be communicated ethically and in a balanced and grounded way to a wide audience, to try to like open up more people to these topics while also doing justice for fellow experiencers. So that was not going the way I wanted it to in every aspect. So when I met Chenade, I was like, she's got, like, it sounded like she had everything I needed. And she also had a massive network, Nathan. Like you said, I know a lot of people. Chenade knows a ton of people too. So it was like the universe aligning when we met, and it just played out perfectly. Like literally within 12 hours, it just opened up and we were new co-hosts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then we had a crazy experience as we were leaving Contact in the Desert. We found out that we were on the same flight. And so, yeah, I mean, there was more to it. I had a very strange series of experiences that is another story, but Anthony was there to witness part of that. And then we also just realized, like, almost just before we got in the cab on the way to the airport, that we were on the same flight. So we ended up using that flight at our first podcast meeting and kind of sketched out, what we would like it to be, and got going right away. And it's been so easy. It's been almost, how many months has it been now, Anthony? Because I think we started almost right away, right in April. So
yeah, it's been like, no, that was like June. It's been 8-9 months, however long that is. Yeah.
Well, before you know it, it'll be 5 years. So ask me how I know. So it's but you guys really do have
an owl on the way to the airport in that cab.
Oh, really?
In the daytime. Yeah. Like right pulling into the airport. It was just chilling on a pole. Yeah.
Wow.
Some high strangeness for sure.
Well, you guys have an awesome chemistry, and you are very naturally good at this. So I encourage the folks watching the show, check you guys out, because it's just a good listen. Great guests. You land some really quality guests that aren't the kind of usual folks who appear on the UFO podcast, right? And that's not easy to do. I mean, that takes work, to convince people that aren't in the ufological conversation to like step onto a UFO phenomenological kind of podcast. That can be a little bit scary, but you've done that, and you're getting scientists able to talk about what the work that they're doing. So it's really, really, really good stuff. I go ahead. Sorry, to what it.
Yeah, just thank you so much for saying that, because that's something that no one else has said that to us so far, by the way. So much appreciated that you noticed that, because it's extremely important to us to showcase that kind of content and not just go for the people that are already known and their voices are everywhere anyway, right? We want to bring other voices into it. So really appreciate that you noticed that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've got to figure out a good way to make that happen where the conversations can be natural and human engaging, right? So instead of it being kind of adversarial, which I think is sometimes the case on some of these podcasts, I think this and you think that, and let's kind of debate that. Let's explore the territory where we might have some common ground, and let's dive into areas that I think everybody as a human being experiences and we don't quite have an explanation for. And let's just talk about them. Let's not have to put them in a certain box. Let's just try to explore that territory. And I think you guys did a really good job of that, and look forward to more stuff that you got coming down the pipeline.
Thanks. And I think what me and Chenade have in common is we both view consciousness as a critical component to all of these topics. And I mean, I personally, like, because of my background, I was an open source intelligence analyst. I looked at how information shapes public opinion. And I really had this understanding, and Chenade, I felt like, had it too, of how important it is to communicate these topics in a way that breaks down the like constructed boundaries that we've put up around all of them, to see these interconnecting elements in all of these phenomena, which I think will open it up so much better for everyone.
Yeah.
If you two didn't have an experience, are you not sitting here right now?
Nope, I'm not.
Sinead?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I talk about things now that I never, ever, ever thought in a million years that I would ever be talking about, really. Like, there are things that come out of my mouth that if I had known 10 years ago that I was going to be saying these things with such ease, I wouldn't have believed it. I mean, it really is. These experiences are life-changing. They transform you. They transform your life. They transform everything about your life if you're really into it. And so I'm not the same person, as a result of all these experiences, and better for it, I would add. So I'm very glad to be here as a result of all of that.
Totally second that. Like, I was a complete introvert. My experience changed me completely. It gave me a sense of mission and duty almost to open up this conversation and this dialogue around these topics. And it was because of the meaning that I derived from it. And I felt like so many of us are missing that meaning in life these days. And I wanted to share that with everyone. So,
yeah, we really feel like there's a meaning crisis going on. It's like there's so many things. We're living in such an interesting time, to use the Chinese way, Chinese proverbial way of putting it. Usually when you say, may you live in interesting times to someone, it's almost like a curse, right? Mm-hmm. I don't quite mean it in that way. I mean, we really literally are living in a very interesting, very fascinating time with a lot of things for us to think about very carefully, and not, I think these are also things that make us very emotional. And there's a lot of emotion in conversations that are public these days. There's a lot of emotion in politics. Politics used to be emotionless, but it used to be very dry. Yes. So people are obviously feeling a lot of what is going on, but the problem is that a lot of the responses and reactions tend to come from emotion, like fear, uncertainty, whatever else, rather than critical thinking, a balanced place within yourself that you've reached through spiritual work, whatever, right? And so we feel like it's very important to, regardless of our own opinions and what we've experienced and what we feel, that you have to be aware of what's going on in general for the collective, right? Like, no man is an island. We're all part of a community here. We're trying to be a community. We're trying to create a better world. We're trying to help humanity the best that we can. And we can't do that if we're polarized, right? So to go back to what Anthony said about consciousness, I personally feel that, and I feel this more and more strongly, the more research I do, the more experience I have, the more I learn, consciousness is absolutely fundamental. This physical world is an illusion. I mean, we already know that from basic physics, right? Like basic fundamental physics that you learn in school tells us that everything is made up of tiny little molecules that are vibrating incredibly quickly. And if we were Neo in the Matrix, we'd be able to just put our hand right through it, right? So that is reality. Reality is that anything that we look at, including our own bodies, are made up of mostly space. So that is why can't we imagine thus that reality is mostly space, not solid? Therefore, let's think about things differently here. Let's be less attached to physical material reality and think on a broader scale what is going on. And so that's where Anthony and I really live, is on the consciousness side of it. It's not so much the nuts and bolts and crafts and what they look like and that's all very interesting too. But to me and to Anthony, it goes beyond the physical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
you're
mean, I just
saying
want to know
I
how
don't-
many payment plans are on the UFO. Is it a
Yes.
is it a
Yes.
3-year,
Like
a 6-year?
yeah, and I shouldn't
Trying
get
to get-
rims for my RAV4 is what I just heard from that. No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely.
So because of the because of what you said, like, can you tell us about your experiences as kind of like an appetizer, what happened with each of you, and then we can expand there into how the Monroe Institute and their work and how resonant that's been for you guys. We could get there, but can we start at sort of Genesis, if you will?
Yeah, and if I could really quickly before you start, because I
Please.
was going to go the same direction, and this dovetails with what you said, Sinead. Talk about how the feelings that were connected to the experience also interplayed with the thinking and the analyzing aspect of the experience, because I know that there is that critical interplay. Sometimes one happens before the other, and then it's kind of like a dynamic conversation between the feelings and the analysis. So would love to get your take on that too.
Love that. Well, I'll answer that really quickly, and then Anthony, if you want to start talking about your experiences first, I'll go after you. So in terms of emotion and logic, I mean, feelings, this is what I feel like I've learned. I only really feel like I can speak from my own perspective, my own experience, right? Like, I can't make any statements that would be true for everyone. But in my own experience, emotions are also information. So, I mean, thoughts are information, emotions are information. It's all about how we interact with them, right? We can get carried away with our thoughts. We can get carried away with our feelings. But if we are aware of our thoughts, aware of our feelings, then, for example, if you're having some kind of emotion, right, and it's overwhelming to you, if you are on the spiritual path and you're a practitioner and you're able to develop a certain amount of awareness, you can stop yourself while you're having this emotion and go with awareness, I am feeling this right now. This is overwhelming to me. What am I going to do about it? So therefore, you're thinking about what you're feeling, but they're both happening. The thinking and the feeling are in partnership with each other. Whereas what a lot of people would do, and I feel like we're kind of taught to do this in terms of how we're socialized, that you have an emotion, you're totally justified in having this emotion, and you should just let it out, right? And that's not necessarily the most skillful thing to do. And it's also very self-centered behavior. So same thing with thoughts. I mean, there are people in our field who are highly, highly intellectual, brilliant, very well, very learned, very educated in their field of expertise. But if they exist only in what they've read and all the things that we think we know on a cerebral level, you're separating yourself from the experiential part of it, which is just as important, as all of us here know, just as important in terms of understanding the phenomenon and consciousness and who we are as human beings, because the experiential is really what makes it real. I mean, you can read about riding a bike, right? You can read about it. You can learn how to ride a bike by reading a book. It's that old example, right? But you can't actually really know what it's like unless you get on a bike and ride it and fall off and get back on and all of that. So I feel like it's really awareness that is the key. And I think we're living in a time that disconnects us from our bodies, from our own thoughts, from our own feelings. We've learned some very unhealthy ways of operating. Yeah.
That was super interesting, because it made me think that, I guess, because my follow-up, and that this one could go to you and Anthony, then based on that, is then what is meant to be gleaned from reading a book? Is it just to stimulate thought, to get you to have an experience, or to bring your mind to that place and explore maybe beyond what maybe are the expansive boundaries that book took you to, but to go beyond, not to become your dogma, whatever that book happens to be? What's the purpose of reading?
Education, knowledge, intelligence, exercising the brain, being exposed to all the possibilities, right? Because I mean, why not hear everything? Learn everything, think about everything. Why not? Right? Like, then if you're open to all the possibilities and all the information that's out there, and you're able to take it and think about it and feel on it, like feel what your emotions are, what the resonance of that thing is with you, whether it fits with you or not, sits with you or not, it all serves a purpose. Like, every single thing that's happening in this reality, whether it's a book, a film, an interaction with a person, a relationship, whatever it is, it's all information. It's all stuff for us to use, right? So I feel like we're very fortunate as human beings in many ways, even though the world seems like it's going to hell in a handbasket. We also have so much at our that is available to us, right, as tools to use on this journey. And books are just one of them. But I don't think that people that write books, I mean, there's this whole thing about status and elitism that we have in the community, right? Like, oh, there's only certain types of experiencers that are the right type of experiencer because they're a government witness or they're in the army or whatever, or there's only a certain type of book that is the right kind of book to read for information. Well, who's judging that? Who's deciding that to begin with, right? I mean, why can't we just learn it all, read it all, and trust ourselves to land on conclusions for us? Not like giant statements about what's going on in general for everyone, but how does this book or this experience or this relationship or this person or this podcast fit with me? Is it helping me on my own journey? And then you can suggest it to other people. Hey, I saw this great podcast, but maybe it doesn't resonate with them. Maybe they need another tool to use. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I mean, all the things, that's my answer.
Great. Anthony, what does it open your aperture? And then do you go beyond that space that it opened? Like what does reading do for you?
Yeah. I mean, I can kind of riff on that a bit and tie it back to Nathan's question too. So because my 15-year career up through early last year was all about information. It was about deriving information from publicly available sources of media and social media. And I began to learn how that shapes our emotions, how that can control our emotions, how that can fit into these automatic boxes that we've created depending on our conditioning and our belief systems. So, I mean, if you're just ingesting information, whether you're reading or listening, I like listening more than reading these days. It's if you do not have the awareness that Chenade was talking about earlier, of yourself and where you're coming from with all of it, then it's not, I mean, it's going to reinforce whatever it is, whatever construct and paradigm or worldview you have. So I was like that most of my life. Myself, I was like that, and it does change over time. Your politics can change, your views can change. I had a political awakening, a religious awakening in college. I did complete 180s. But I grew up in a family environment where they had completely different views than I did on all these topics. And when you come out of that allows you and forces you to kind of have that introspective look at why people box things in a certain way, and how that should not change. That does not necessarily change who they actually are, what's driving them and what their intentions are, what their ethics are, what their morals are. They all kind of get filtered through these constructs. So that my changes in my life after college, I had a few experiences, to answer your question earlier, in college that were sleep paralysis experiences with entities. And that was before I knew anything about these fields. So I immediately just psychopathologized myself and forgot about it. Because this is the other thing, is because this cognitive dissonance that we have around these weird and high strangeness topics. So I did that, and I just went on with my life. And up through my 20s, even though my politics changed and everything, I did not have the awareness that Sinead was talking about. I just I knew people thought differently than me. It upset me. It frustrated me. I could not understand where we were going as a country. I could not understand why my parents had held on to certain views. And it was kind of this egocentric perspective on all of these things. And it took COVID, when the pandemic hit, to really shake me out. And I think it shook a lot of people out of routines that we have been stuck in. that act as this like reinforcing brainwashing that we co-create with all of the informational space around us. And it shook me out of it, and it forced me to become more introspective. I started diving into these topics of UFOs and high strangeness, and I very quickly learned about the consciousness element that seems to weave through all of this. And it reinvigorated and brought back this sense of meaning that I had in my life when I was a kid, essentially. Meaning and enchantment and like wonder that I had lost because of that brainwashing. And that caused me to like go and want to have a positive consciousness expanding experience once I started reading about how that was a thing. I didn't even know it was. And just to make it short, like I created a protocol for myself, combining different contact modalities that I had come across in literature and reading and listening to things. And I had an amazing experience with a being, with telepathic communications, with a past life vision. It changed and reoriented my life completely. It changed who I am. It changed how I talk. It changed where I talk. It changed everything for me. So yeah.
That that's really interesting. And Nathan, I guess meeting him was the best part. No, I'm just kidding. Of this journey, I'm just kidding.
Of his experience.
Yeah. All right.
Meeting me is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. I want to say like early on, actually, so I applied the same like approach I did at work to this field, which is like initially source identification and then source analysis, because there's a lot of noise, right, in this field, like any others. And I did find you guys calling all beings like early on in my journey. I'm not just saying this, like I did. And I think it was on one episode you guys had where you mentioned Darren, Exo-Academian, as like an important source who really seems to have his shit straight, if I can say that. Yep. And that's what led me to him. And then that opened up all of these circles and yeah.
Wild. Yeah.
And after crazy. Watching, you still decided to come on?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good. All right. Good stuff. All right, cool. I'm glad that we didn't scare you off. And obviously Chenade didn't heed any, prior warnings. So
I tried.
That's, by the way, their show, Fire in the Cosmos, is pinned to the top of the chat. So if you want to see what Anthony and Chenade are up to, please go to the top of the chat. And now I'll go with my radio voice and go, Anthony and Chenade, tell me about your experience. Yeah.
That's really good.
You guys haven't heard me do my FM
I've
radio?
never heard that. That's fantastic.
Oh, for Christ's sakes, where have you been, Nathan? All right.
Fabulous.
Okay.
We heard Anthony's, right? Or do you want to tell us more about it, Anthony?
Yeah, I can give like a 2-minute summary of it, basically. Because DJ did mention the Monroe Institute, and that was kind of related. So, so this like contact protocol that I created, I wanted to combine all these different modalities. So I also knew I had this like very left-brained, very logical, analytical approach to viewing the world. And I had come across some research around psychedelics, specifically psilocybin, and how that seemed to rewire certain parts of the brain and suppress certain things like the default mode network that I felt like maybe if I had never touched any psychedelics, but I was like, maybe if I use this in a very like cautious and logical way, that it could help me open up to things that otherwise I can't access consciously or informationally or emotionally. So I basically built this protocol with the plan of eventually topping it off with psychedelics, psilocybin mushrooms. And I started with things that I was going to use to kind of prime myself to get to that. And I started with certain breathwork techniques, pranayama and Wim Hof breathwork. And then that led me into a meditative practice that I was training on that was from the Monroe Institute's Gateway program. And I viewed all of these as kind of primers for my brain. I applied things like some fasting, some sensory deprivation, And then my plan was to, after like 8 months of training on those, to combine it with a heroic dose of mushrooms and see what happens in a very intentional way. And when I finally did that, and my plan was to listen to this like repetitive shamanic drumming through the duration of the journey, just lying down with my eyes covered and primed with the breath work and the meditation and the fasting and all that. And that is what induced my first experience. And I had a being that visualized more real than you all are right now. With my eyes closed, it visualized in front of me.
More real than us?
Yes. Sorry, man.
Oh my God.
It was. It was this
right.
like ultra sensorial experience is the best way I can describe it.
I can understand. I was kidding.
And there were 8 or 9 others around it. I couldn't see them except for this one. And it resembled like something out of like the ancient Egyptian pantheon of deities, either Ra or Horus. It was like a man's body with a hawk or a falcon for a head. And I was not into that stuff. Like it was not in my worldview. And this telepathic communication ensued, mixed with like the most amazing love-filled emotions and interconnectedness, and this sense of remembrance. Like I had known this and forgotten it, and we all knew this and forgot it. And this experience went on for several hours, which felt like years essentially in terms of how much information and emotion came through with it. They like, I'll let you guys ask questions because I don't want to go too long, but they told me certain information. It was a back and forth of communication that happened. I guess most interestingly, they said that we had forgotten who they were essentially, and that they had been taking actions for us to know them again. And what I got was that it was happening through our media and our films and our creatives, essentially, that they were being inspired and or influenced to essentially gradually open up the collective consciousness by acting as channels for whatever these beings or these forces were that were working through us, to eventually allow us to know them again, whatever that means.
This protocol sounds a lot like what they're treating PSD, war sort of veteran PTSD patients down in Mexico with, and with astounding success where nothing else worked. So I'm so glad that you were able to have that journey. And after I get quit being drug tested, I probably need to have that kind of a journey.
Thank you.
And would you like to, Debs, would you like to start off with a question, and then we can go to Bia, and then we can get Chenade's story, and then Nathan may have a question as well.
Yeah, you guys were talking about super deep stuff, but unfortunately, I'm going to current events. You knew this was coming.
Yeah, don't knock the train off the tracks yet.
We're going a whole different direction now all of a sudden. What happened here?
Couldn't wait.
I only have time for this one question.
Oh, that's right. You got it. I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot.
So I just wanted to get your input. I looked at what was said by Obama. I looked at what was said by Trump, and it did come across to me that Trump sort of said that it was confidential information that was revealed, and that seemed to reaffirm it. So what are your guys' opinions about presidential statements this week?
Oh boy. I'll go briefly first. This is Anthony's strength more than mine, but I think it's very intriguing. I mean, it definitely, it goes further, even though the wording is really not very clear. It still sounds like, yeah, maybe sort of, we might do this, but it's still further along than any other statement made by any other president or leader of any country that I'm aware of. And it does seem to lean towards him, actually disclosing that this is all real. However, I'm skeptical because it's Trump. I'm letting my politics be transparent right now. It's Trump. He says a lot of things and then backtracks later, or says things purposefully to be incendiary and then doesn't follow through on them. That's not unusual in politics. But I kind of wonder if that might be part of the point, if he's trying to get people really revved up about disclosure, to distract us from, for example, the Epstein files, which is an incredibly crucial event that's going on right now, and is partially responsible for exposing even more of what we've already been seeing exposed over the last, more and more over the last few years. Deep dysfunction in the systems that run our societies, essentially. As for Obama, that was very funny. I feel like he did that deliberately. I think he said what he said very deliberately. I think this is all being done quite deliberately. I think it's a skillful rollout of a sort that also is deliberately meant to look kind of messy. I think that there's a lot of testing the waters going on. This is just my opinion, of course, but I think there's a lot of testing of the waters. What if we were to say this, like at the governmental level, right? At that level of power, what if we were to say this to the public? Let's just try it. Like, let's just dip our toe in the water and see how they're going to respond. And that will give us information about how we can make disclosure happen if we're going to do that. I think that there's a strategy happening. I think Obama, I don't know. It's almost, I saw a funny meme the other day that really did make me think. It was humorous, but it also, I feel like there could be something there. And in the meme, there's 4 panels. On the first panel is Obama, a shot of him in that interview saying, yes, basically aliens are real, without actually saying that. Then after that, it's a panel of Trump going, oh, he shouldn't have said that. That was classified. The next panel is Trump saying, well, maybe I'll get Obama out of trouble and help him out, by making disclosure happen. And then the last panel is Obama putting on a pair of shades, being like, yeah, you're the disclosure president. So how much of the stuff that we're seeing, the optics and what's being presented publicly, how much of that is accurately representing the mechanisms that are going on behind the scenes? I don't know. And I think I'll end there. Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Chenade. I agree with a lot of that. I do think there's a lot of signaling happening that we are not privy to as the public, and that happens all the time in politics. I agree. I don't know, to what extent Obama, I don't know what he was trying to do with his statement, but it was clear to me when it happened that there was more to it, and that it wasn't just he wasn't just referring to the Fermi paradox when he just made that statement and left it there. It did seem very screened with the interviewer beforehand, that there wouldn't be a follow-up. That's the sense I got, because what kind of good interviewer would not follow up on that, even if it was a speed round, like they said. So yeah, I think there was something there. I don't know if there was any sort of coordination with Trump on that or his team. I don't know, could be, but yeah. But my overall take is I agree that I'm also skeptical. I know how Trump is. I also know how our government is. I know that unless he didn't even talk about declassifying things. He just said, I'm calling on the DOD and other agencies to release these files. That means nothing without having some meat and muscle behind it. So yeah, but with that said, I would say because we have this view of consciousness and what could be happening underneath all of this and kind of weaving through our lives and our reality. I frankly, I don't really care if they release all the files. I don't care about that. At the same time, as experiencers, we hear this all the time from some experiences, and they're like, we don't need the government to disclose. We have already had disclosure. How many times do you hear that? That is a narrative that is common. But I also think it's a somewhat, I don't want to say self-defeating, but it does keep us kind of boxed in as a community. And my concern is that's kind of what these forces who don't want this information public want us to say. It's how they want us to approach this topic. Just keep it this esoteric, boxed in field and have our own little subcultures and communities. But I think it's about so much more than that. And I think we're being called to look at what's actually happening with these phenomena and these realities, and how that could change our world, to change who we are, how we relate to others. And I view these fields as a way to do that. And I think just from the fact that Trump is talking about this issue, that Obama was talking about it, the putting it out there in that information space does something to us on a consciousness level. And it may not happen immediately, but it can be this ping, this reference point for people for when maybe they do experience something that's tangentially anomalous. That rather than like immediately employing the cognitive dissonance shield and blocking it out and forgetting about it, maybe something within them is like, hey, President Obama mentioned this or Trump mentioned it, you know? So I think there's a way on a consciousness level where no matter what comes out of this, like if we don't just step back and let Trump do what Trump is going to do with it, and we actually use this and utilize it to communicate better to the wider public about these topics, that we can actually have the disclosure that we want in that way.
At least the materialist version, you know, that, and I would suggest you guys probably are not in that camp that needs to see the craft and know then this and that, and because you guys are connecting on a different level than some people do. They're kind of waiting to see something and have someone tell them, yes, that's real. And I think you guys are probably not in that camp. But yeah, well put by all the points. Boston Bia.
Yeah, kind of going along the lines of that. I almost feel like by putting this thought out there for those who have experience, maybe this could be like a confirmation, kind of like, I'm not, you know, but I do believe that those who have had the experiences truly believe in what they don't need the government to confirm it, but I do feel like it would just be like another, like, you're not crazy, like that you're, I don't know, a validation, I guess.
That's
is
a
what
good point.
The word. Sorry, just that's a word I was trying to get into. Validation for what they experienced. But I also think, obviously, this is just a distractor. And I also think of all the people that have come out and, you know, lost jobs over speaking up about what they were a part of, and how that's going to now, if the government's putting it out, confirming and validating this, what about all these people that lost their jobs and their careers and their, you know, all their status to be upfront with everybody? So sorry, it was more of a statement than it was a question.
Hey, Bia, going all the way back to the Japan Airlines pilot in 1986, they were flying that 747, and that craft, they made a 180-degree turn, and it was following them, and it was huge and blocked their view, and air traffic control was tracking it. That guy lost his job over that story. So, and there have been many others, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a great point, B. And I just want to like reiterate that and add on to it. Like I agree, and I think that like I met a pilot at a bar like around Christmas time. I forgot which airline, maybe American or Delta. And I just randomly asked him about UAPs, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I don't really like I can't really talk about it." And I was like, "Well, why? Because it's stigmatized." And he's like, "Yeah." And then he opened up a bit, and he was like, "Yeah, I've seen a few weird things I can't explain." And he's like, "I know a lot of other pilots who have. It's a very common thing, but we don't talk about it because of the risk it would put our careers in psychologically." So when people say like, we don't need the government to disclose, okay, maybe you don't, but maybe because you're comfortable with this and talking about it, and like you have a good community. But how many, like probably millions of people out there have lost not only jobs, but have lost wives, husbands, custody over children, friends, like everything over an experience they had that changed their lives. Or if they didn't lose them, they just can't talk about it, and they're stuck, and they're stuck in this cage in their mind or in their heart because they can't talk about these things. Mm-hmm. So I would caution people when they say things like that, and think about like not waiting for the government to do it, but how you can actually seize the moment of this, no matter what the government is doing, but the fact that they're talking about it, how we can seize that moment to open things up for everyone.
Yeah, I can tell you, I retired as a Air Force aviator in 2012, and you did not talk about this topic in the squadron, period, unless you wanted to find yourself off the flying schedule.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, listen, in Canada, we had the Honorable Paul Hellyer, who died a couple of years ago. He is a hero of mine. I mean, he was our Minister of Defense, the Minister of Defense for Canada from 67 to 72 or 74. While he was Minister of Defense, and nobody knows this, Grant Cameron and I talked about this on one episode that we did with another podcast when Paul Hellyer died, as a kind of testimony to, who he was in his life and everything he did. He really tried whatever he could to make movement happen within the Canadian government. And he even went so far as, while he was Minister of Defense, flying from Ottawa, our nation's capital, to this tiny little town in the middle of Manitoba, just because it had decided, because there'd been so many sightings there, the prairie provinces in Canada, there's a lot of activity, a lot of UFO activity. And actually, Grant Cameron had a huge experience there called Charlie Red Star when he was a college student. That's what started his whole career. And that was in Manitoba, where he's from. So anyway, there's this little town in Manitoba, and Paul Hellyer flew there to cut the ribbon for the opening ceremony of the first ever UFO landing pad in Canada while Minister of Defense. I mean, come on, right? And this was in 70 something. This was in like the early 70s. So this is the man who knew so much more than he was allowed to say, that he was able to say, but he decided to become an activist and write books and, speak up about it as soon as he could. So speaking to what Anthony was saying, I think there's so many people who are in an official capacity or just a citizen on the ground who are trapped within their experience. It's something that you can't shake loose from. I mean, we all know this, right? Like, you can't forget it. Once you have an experience like that, that's it. You can't go back. You've had this experience. Something is now different, and you cannot return to normalcy as you knew it before. So yes, I mean, I believe that disclosure has essentially already happened on the ground, but echoing Anthony, I really feel it's important to have it happen on an official level as well, because a lot of people need that.
Yeah. And if I can add one more thing. So I do also, I'm not just in the woo consciousness space. I also believe that there is a very materialist element to this field, this topic, and these phenomena. And that is why we can't just forget about the government in this process, because the possibilities there could materially change our lives and open up things and democratize so many sectors for humans, for the public. And it maybe could bring a better sense of equality for people. So one thing that I also do on the side is I volunteer for Citizens for Disclosure under the New Paradigm Institute. And I run the Virginia chapter there. And I don't know if people have seen this yet. I just want to put this out there, but Danny Sheehan just wrote this letter essentially creating a binding resolution that Trump could follow for an executive order that would actually create that meat and give that muscle behind what he claims he wants to do. And if you all want to check that out, it's on newparadigminstitute.org. And it's right at the top. You can click that link there and it goes through it. And I'll just read like 10 seconds of it, but it says, it mentions all the loopholes that anyone could use to get away from this. So it talks about defining key terms: non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial intelligence, UAP, flying discs, flying saucers, UFOs, USOs, technologies of unknown origin. It does all that. And then it also adds the congressional component to actually have oversight over this process, which is not in Trump's post. So it talks about all that. It goes into a lot more detail. I encourage folks to check it out. All you have to do is fill out your info there, and it sends to the White House automatically in 30 seconds. So yeah, that's a way you can actually do something to, if you think this is a distraction, which it likely is, then hold their feet to the fire and show that there is public support behind this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would just add too that even if it is a distraction, and I think you guys hinted on this already, it's going to start causing certain tiny pebbles to fall down the mountain, right? That will accumulate into larger boulders. And I think that there's unseen, unintended consequences of something that may, in his mind, be a look over here. I find this very entertaining, and the people find this very entertaining. So let them be entertained. But you've got a lot of lawmakers who've devoted a considerable amount of energy to getting to the bottom of this, who are taking it very seriously, and they posted about that already. They're applauding this effort, that they're going to continue to push and use this as justification to push for the release of more information. So there's still this when the rubber meets the road moment that hasn't, I don't think, happened yet. What does Hegseth actually do? What are they able to find? If they find something, they still have to say, "Hey, you sure you want us to release this?" Like there's a lot to this that I think is more complicated. But I think to the larger point, it does. There are many aspects of our shared reality that require a kind of permission, right? It's sort of like, it's okay to think about this now, and our academic institutions, from the very youngest to the very oldest in academia, like we're kind of on rails in a certain way, and told to look at certain things and take those things seriously. Now, this topic, as we know, is unique in many aspects, in that it has the potential to really completely fragment like what you think is going to happen. So people who come onto this from the start might think, okay, well, great, we're just going to talk about aliens from other planets and flying saucers, and then it starts cascading into areas that are far more anomalous and strange and fractured and peculiar than they intended. And the ultimate, I think, end point of this is that there's a destabilizing nature to reality itself. It's not that something we can like eventually figure out. Like, no, reality truly is just destabilizing. Like there's no ground floor to reality. It keeps breaking apart. And that's something that this one topic really has a unique ability to do, to destabilize the mind and paradigms in general. And this is just part of that process. So it is very interesting. I think, like you said earlier, Chenade, we live in interesting times. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And we live in a time where we have forces that are, to steal Darren's term, there's a point of convergence. They're converging into this
Copyright
singularity.
Strike.
Exactly. He's going to come after us now.
Okay.
He's lurking everywhere.
Okay.
Exactly. But we're on these paths at the moment with artificial intelligence and climate and geopolitics and the phenomena, like where things are really coming to a head, and the way in which we understood reality, the world, our societies, ourselves, all of that is coming into question and into conflict. And so it's a lot of work, actually. It's going to be really, I think, uncomfortable. And like a lot of learning, it comes from trauma. So we're going to go through a kind of civilizational trauma through one or more of these pathways, and then grow as a result of that, but not without some pain. So it's truly interesting. It's Deb, I appreciate you bringing it up. I knew we were going to talk about it, but it's going to be 2026 is just getting weirder and weirder, right? We're not even that far in, and it's pretty crazy.
Agreed.
Yep, agreed.
Agreed. There's so much you just said that I really like a lot. There's no ground floor to reality. That's something I'm going to remember. That's a great way of putting it. And it reminds me of Inception, that movie. It comes up a lot, and no, not a lot, but it comes up often enough in conversations I have with friends in the community. That concept of being in a dream and falling through that dream, the floor of that dream, into another dream, then falling through the floor of that dream into another dream. I feel like that's I don't know if that's what you were thinking of, but, I feel like that's a wonderful analogy for what we're experiencing right now, because the rug keeps getting pulled out from under us, right? All the things that we've been so used to having as dependable, safe, predictable systems are just not there anymore. I mean, they are, but they're, as you put it, crumbling. And I feel like that's necessary. Even though it's scary, it's also necessary. Like Anthony and I just finally finished designing our logo. We're about to actually put it out there into the world. But one of the things that we wanted to put on the logo was the phoenix, because that's a symbol that we keep hearing about and experiencing in the community. And I think there's a reason for that. I'm a big believer in fundamental, again, consciousness being fundamental, and therefore all of us being connected to consciousness, and all of us being able to, in a way, draw down from my kind of gesture up here, because it feels a lot like a lot of the information that helps us do better, aim higher, evolve is above us. It just feels that way energetically. So, I think we all have the ability to draw down from the ethers or from consciousness what we want or what we need to learn. But that, I feel like, is a challenge that we're not always aware of. We're not always aware that we have the ability to do that. And if we did have that awareness, it would be so much more helpful to so many people that are going through this falling through the floor experience over and over and over again, right? I mean, people are really scared. There's a lot of instability. And if we were a more evolved species, I think we'd be handling that fear and that uncertainty in very different ways. That's partially what is kind of concerning is, how are people going to react to, respond to, interact with what's happening, and how can we people that are in this community who don't know everything, but at least understand that there's a broader picture that's going on here, how can we help them? And so I think activism is a very, very important part of that. It's not just pushing the needle forward in whatever way we need to, or, putting pressure on government to disclose. It's also to really come together as a community more and more strongly and look out for each other during this time of huge destabilizing transition that is also revealing new possibilities and new potentials to us, which are very exciting. And I feel very optimistic on the whole about 2026. I think it's going to be a wild year. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of instability, everything we just said, but every coin has two sides. And if you flip it over, all the possibilities and potentials are on the other side, right? So I just hope that as we're all going through this together, that we're able to focus on conversations that are related to how we can act, how we can be activists or act in whatever way to feel power, to discover the power we actually do have, that we're not just passive people wandering through life at the whims of our government. That's not actually true. So, this is an opportunity amongst all of this seeming chaos to find our own power, find our own voices, become active in whatever way we feel is necessary for ourselves as individuals, but also for the community. So I just want to say that because I feel like there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of narrative out there, even on some wonderful podcasts that kind of troubles me a little bit because I feel like there's a bit too much emphasis on how scary and awful everything is and, how people are so crappy and stuff like that. That's not really my experience. My experience is that people are really, really quite wonderful and that on the whole, our behavior is not always wonderful, but who we are as human beings, I think is inherently good. That's my experience over and over and over again. And I also think it has a lot to do with how you walk through the world, right? Like how you choose to walk through the world, whatever vibe you're emanating, the words you choose to use, the actions you choose to take, is going to co-create what comes back to you as well. So there's something here also about accountability and taking personal responsibility. And that's partially why I don't feel like disclosure can only happen through the government, because there's something about that makes me feel like we're waiting for mom and dad to take care of us. Whereas we're really quite capable, intelligent, powerful people, and we can make things happen ourselves if we're really willing to look at who we are as human beings, how we're choosing to walk through the world, take full ownership and accountability for that, and use that to become more powerful. That's what I'm hoping will happen. It's a big ask, but
It's a good one. Like people say that about going to France. They go, "Oh, I go to France and people weren't nice to me." I was like, "Yeah, maybe it's probably you. It's probably the energy that you're bringing there." Because I went there and everybody was nice to me. So I don't know what you're talking about. I interact with all kinds of people. I do have to get to Debs right now because Debs needs to go. She has another engagement. So Debs, did you have a final question, final words? You have the stage, my friend.
I have a few things. One is I do agree that fear is used often in podcasts as a way to get clicks. It's just like the news will use it, which is why I don't like to watch the news, by the way. I see the manipulation. But I do think when conversations are happening amongst presidents and amongst intelligent people, we're beginning to see what Anthony's friend talked about normalization, which is countering that fear. And I think it's okay for that to be the approach that we're going to get. Honestly, neither of them looked afraid when they were talking about this subject. So that indicates a change, a shift, and some other podcasts need to catch up with that. The fear is not the answer anymore. So I just wanted to point out real quick, I recognize, Chenade, your voice from your interview with someone from China. And that was what like resonated with me quite a bit some time ago. I think people don't recognize this as a global phenomenon. So maybe it's something, hopefully someone will get to. It's really interesting. And that's all I have time for, guys. It was great to meet you. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Deb.
Thanks,
We
Deb.
love you.
Bye, Deb.
Thank you, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, totally is a global phenomenon. I would want to second that. I'm Lebanese originally. I was born in Lebanon. I came here when I was 6 years old with my family. And just by me actually talking about these topics a bit more in my household, I had my grandma, who lives in Lebanon, talk about a case that happened to her in the mid 1970s in her village in the mountains in Lebanon that no one in the family had ever heard. And no one had any idea that she was even interested in this topic at all. Because I'm in a very Catholic family, and everything is boxed into that framework. But there is an openness to the mystical and the supernatural within that. But I mean, my grandma said she saw with my grandpa who's a UFO. She didn't say UFO. She said a flying house that appeared over the valley, like overlooking this valley across where they lived. And she said it floated slowly across the valley. It was kind of translucent. She said it had glowing windows. And it was the size, it was like 2 or 3 stories. And it just moved slowly without a sound and then just disappeared and blinked out. And she said this like in a family event, like a year ago around the holidays. And everyone was like, what are you talking? Like, what? My mom, her daughter, and my aunt, her other daughter, they were just like, what are you talking about, Mom? Like, you've never told us that. What? So yes, it is a global phenomenon. And yes, the more we talk about these things, I think the more we'll see how prevalent and all encompassing this is.
I love hearing that UFO encounter, because my sighting was kind of like your grandma. Did you say it was your grandma?
Yeah.
Your grandma in Lebanon? That
Yeah.
is kind of similar to mine, although mine was pretty brief because of the tree line. But what I was going to say, like, about this information, I kind of thought of this earlier in the show when it was either you or Chenade were talking about people putting things in boxes and so forth. And then there's a materialist, but then there's kind of like this, there are these different sort of groups in ufology, but I kind of thought of the bento box. And I thought that for some people, like, you can just take the food and throw it down on a platter, and they're going to eat it. Like you go to a Mexican restaurant, you sort of have the refried beans here, you have the rice here, you have some chicken there, you got a little bit of avocado since Bia's here. So all that kind of stuff. But with some people want their food in a bento box. To them, it's more appealing if they can put it in a box. I've got my rice here, I've got my daikon radish there, I've got my bulgogi here, etc. And I think this information is kind of like that, is that when people don't have the people that you're looking at on the screen right here are very comfortable not having to have a box to put everything in. Yeah. And just not knowing that you don't completely understand. And so for us, it's okay what's going to happen. Deb is like, she's like, oh man, I hope like there's a landing next to my house in Maryland. You know what I mean? Like, and for us, we kind of are like that. We're ready for whatever comes. And also want to pitch this to the group because this is something that Nathan's heard me talk about many times before. But I haven't heard, Chenade and Anthony's reaction. But Bia and I were talking to a new kind of friend and colleague on the phone today. And this came up about what certain entities, or let's say advanced intelligences, would want to take we could use the word abduct if you want to use that word. I guess that's accurate. You know, as Lou Elizondo said, it's a criminal act. A human and get that DNA for what we possess. And this kind of goes to what Chenade was saying. We're a very extraordinary, I don't want to use the word exceptional, you know, like in that nationalistic kind of a way. But what we do have is we have this ability to conjure love, fear, anger, hatred. And from that comes great artwork, music, you know, things that move you emotionally and mentally, that make you feel a certain way when you walk in the Louvre, when you hear your favorite band, when you hear a brand new band that you never heard before, and you're like, oh my God, and you know, you're just moved. And I don't think the advanced intelligences have that. And I think that these more primitive species, you know, these kind of evolved, you know, Joe Rogan always calls us like evolved apes or whatever he says, you know, that we have that. And I think that's the reason what they want to get from humans, because they don't have that. What do you feel about that?
Go ahead, Chenade. I have my thoughts, but I'll let you go.
Well, I mean, I definitely feel that there's a very wide variety of beings out there. I mean, this is from my own experience, but also just kind of makes sense to me, right? That there would be a really, really wide variety of beings out there. I think that's just logical. We live in an enormous, ever-expanding universe. We don't really have a clue what's out there. So I'm going to say that there's a wide variety of beings. That's also, you know, my impression through my own experiences, and that those beings have different capabilities, different motivations, different ways of being, living, you know, and that some of them do have the ability, apparently, to come down to Earth. I'm not exactly sure how, either in some kind of avatar, or they enter into humans and get to share their consciousness without the human being aware that they're there. There's all kinds of different ways that apparently they experience life on Earth. But part of the reason that they do that is to experience food, drink, dance, music, you know, all the senses, all the experiences of the senses that we are so fortunate to have, you know, in human bodies. So I have heard that, read that. I also know Barbara Lamb very well. She's a dear friend of mine. She's an absolutely legendary person in the field because she's a woman. She did not get as much attention as all the men did when she was first coming out into the field. So I like to tell people about her. She's written books. She's done regression therapy for a very long time. She's had amazing extraterrestrial encounters and really doesn't make much of a big deal about herself. And I appreciate that about her. I go to people that are grounded, right? So I've gone to her and just said, look, these are things I'm picking up. You know, what do you think? And that's her experience also in her many, many decades of research. And you hear that from other people too, that there's a wide variety of beings out there and that they're curious about Earth for a wide variety of reasons. So some of them are invested in Earth for positive reasons or for negative reasons. Some of them are just curious and they want to know how we're experiencing Earth, which kind of lends to that theory of that, you know, we're all consciousness wanting to experience itself. Right. And that all of us are kind of like cells in one body. And we just think that we're all separate, but we're actually not. And we're all expressions of consciousness wanting to experience different aspects of itself. So all of these things to me make sense. But in terms of beings coming down to experience sensory things, yes, I've heard that a lot. That's in a lot of research. It's been told by a lot of experiencers dating over many decades. So whenever I see a pattern like that, that's pretty consistent, I tend to feel like, you know, where there's smoke, there's probably fire.
Yeah, I would agree with everything Chenade said. I think there's a multitude variety of beings around us, or within us. And I think some of them may have more ability to experience things than others. I have a drawing here. I'll show you.
Please.
So let's see if this will show up. This drawing, I think it's called a Fairy Funeral. And it was by my friend Brett Manning, who I interviewed before Chenade came on the podcast. It's still up on our channel. And she's an artist and she essentially channels the Fae. And she said this this drawing shows the Fae because they can't experience death like we do.
I'm trying to zoom in here. There we go. Okay. Now, if you go to full screen on your StreamYard, you can see closer. It might put you closer to me than you.
Oh,
no, I can see it.
Not
Yeah.
you, but I could make you larger. Hold on one second.
That's really good. Yeah, I'm gonna go out of full screen then.
There you go.
Wow.
So she told me, and this is in her. She has a book of illustrations, and it basically says because the Fae cannot experience death like we do, that they have these fake funerals that try to emulate human death, and it's kind of like an experience for them. So that could be one example of non-human beings who do not experience things like we do. And yeah, I think that is a thing that we have to consider. I also know that there are theories about like potentially whatever type of being is behind the abduction phenomenon. Maybe they had some sort of genetic issues down the line in their evolution that they're trying to correct. Maybe something happened to their physical space that prevented reproduction to continue in a certain way, and they're trying to get help with that, or to repopulate their world. We don't know. There could be a common ancestry there with us. I've heard from experiencers who say that they feel like they're receiving upgrades during abductions. So it may not be about them trying to experience more of what we can, and maybe about us trying to experience more of what they can that would help us. So I think all of that is on the board.
Oh, you're muted.
When you say upgrades, do you mean like without having to redo your subscription, like to Microsoft 365?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
That's cool. Nathan, do you feel like there's that we're on a certain path of abductions? Do you feel like it's similar to it was in the 70s and 80s, or do you feel like there's an upturn, downturn, status quo, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. There definitely seems to have been a change that has occurred. At least we hear a lot less about abductions than we did in that time. They still happen. I think you get plenty of people that still talk about those experiences, but maybe not as in the focused way that they used to be. But my take on this is similar to what has already been said, but in a way, it's there. You have to be able to look at things from many different vantage points, and they all have a kind of truth to them, right? So there is one vantage point that is talked about. I'll start with the basic kind of level, that abduction is happening. Someone is taken against their will. They're experimented on. It's not fun, right? Like that's a scary, like you said earlier, Elizondo said that crime has been committed, right? Like it doesn't sound like it's up to our standards of ethics and moral, propriety, right? So that one level. Another level that you hear about in the conversation is that this is some sort of agreement. This is something that we've agreed to before we ever came into this experience of being in this body. We had a contract or an agreement with other beings that we all decided we're going to play certain roles in this experience, in this iteration. And we're going to have a kind of amnesia to what those roles are, because if you know what the role is, you can't really fully be in the part, right? So there's something we're supposed to learn from that experience, and learn from the fear state, learn from the aggressor state, every kind of experience in between. There's a learning moment that's happening there. So I think that can also be true, right? So you can see how there's different layers to the experience that are, on some level, they're awful, they're terrible, they're unconscionable. On another level, they're meant for a greater expansion of awareness and understanding, of reflection, almost like a karmic kind of growth that is taking place. And then there's even kind of meta levels above that, and minor levels below, the very lowest ones. It's frustrating because we really crave a kind of certainty with this subject, right? There's a lot of, I want to know what is really happening, why it's happening. Like, I mean, I get that. I mean, I think we are designed in a way to need that kind of closure. And that's what's giving us the ability to do many things you talked about, DJ, that give us that creative capacity. Like we need to resolve this tension. And so we've become like these incredible alchemists, right? We have this ability to transmute all these energies into other formations of energy, and not everything can do that, right? Like my wife was telling me this story about this guy who was an airman. He crash landed in the backcountry of Alaska in the wintertime, and he survived 81 days in the backcountry before they found him. Like, you can't take a lot of species and just drop them in ecosystems that they're not really suited for, and they can make it out, right? It's a good example of just our resilience and our capabilities. And so it's frustrating, and I get it. A lot of folks want that kind of nice, tidy answer. What does it mean? What does the abduction mean? And I think those who've had the experiences, they're in that boat too. Why did this happen to me? And if you talk to them and you look at their reflections on that experience over time, most of the time I've seen that that changes a lot, right? So it goes like, it's almost like the stages of grief, they go through a lot of phases in interpreting that experience and what it means. And life is like that too, right? So like, you can live a long enough time, and you revisit things that happened to you in your past. I'm just talking about regular things that happened to us. Why did I meet this person? Why did they come into my life? Why did I get in that car accident? Was it a good thing or was it a bad thing? Well, man, at the time it felt like an awful thing because I was in the hospital, but later on it ended up make a dramatic impact on my life. I met so-and-so. I would have never met them otherwise. It's a narrative. There's a narrative, like, capability that we possess that is truly like magical. Like it's transformative. And I think that, and I'll finish on this, is that capability, that capacity is present in source itself, right? Like we are little glimpses of source consciousness that has this tremendous creative potential. And we just get the chance, the blessing, the gift to like be kind of put into these confines, and then to say, do what you can with that. Like, I'm going to put you in this tight little spot here, and I'm going to be a little bit uncomfortable, but you do what you can with that. Let me see what you're going to do with it. And it's really amazing what we can. If you don't have any constraints, like it's a little less exciting, right? It's just, whatever. But I think we have that gift. We've been given a gift to do so much within this paradigm that we find ourselves.
Yeah,
totally. I totally agree. And then the question is, are we doing that? Right. Because, I mean, that's such a huge conversation, the conditioning, the social and cultural conditioning that we're all subjected to from day one, and, how we're taught how to be as human beings versus how we can actually be as human beings. These two parallel kind of existences that are also, I think this normalcy that we've been discussing, right? All these systems that have been in place all this time that are now breaking down. We've been talking about them as physical systems, but this is a system also, right? The system of what we consider to be normal, right? How we're supposed to be human beings, how we're supposed to do life. It's all completely fabricated, and it's fabricated based on the opinions of whoever came before, and, who was responsible for creating the structure of what we all exist within. And that doesn't mean that they're all evil or overlords and they want to control us. But I do think that maybe in the process of, eons ago, in the process of trying to create early civilizations and early human systems, things had to be organized, because that is how they were going to work efficiently for the benefit of many people, right? But then we just continued on down that exact same pathway and never took note when it stopped working. And it seems to be right now, it's really stopped working. People are very aware of that. They're starting to question it, and it's helping them start to question themselves and their own realities and how they think and how they feel. So yeah, I mean, it's a time of just unceasing. I see it as just so much potential, negative and positive, right? And that so much of it is about our own choices. It really, like, that's where I land every day, on an individual level. I just land at, okay, how much ownership am I taking in my own life right now? Like, am I able to take responsibility for my own thoughts and feelings, how they affect me, how they affect other people? am I able to really own who I want to be in the world and how I want to be that way? I don't know. It's a very big question, but it's something that is so inherent in all these discussions as part of people trying to make sense of what's going on and trying to narrow it down to something that's understandable, they can put in a box and then use for themselves. Right. And there really is something to that. Like, we can't just live in the air, right? Like, we wouldn't get anything done. We do need organized systems. So I'm not against that, but I'm against how they have been done up until now. I mean, they're just not serving us anymore. It's just that simple.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that, and I'll be very brief because I don't have much more to say on top of that. But yeah, I mean, it's these boxes that have been created, and it's almost like there was, if there was a positive intention with initially doing that boxing in and the duality creation that Nathan was referring to, away from this non-dual source to have us experience something like opposites or binaries. But it's almost like we continue to do that, like you were saying. And now we have all of these boxes within boxes within boxes within boxes within boxes of reality that we've completely forgotten the ways in which this wider reality actually weaves through all of that. And we need to break out of some of those boxes to maybe allow that non-duality in.
It's so difficult to figure out the balance of being creative, being you, being a positive human within humanity, looking at it as humanity instead of I'm like we were talking about earlier. I'm Canadian, I'm American, I'm this, I'm from New York, I'm from Virginia, blah, blah, blah. And figuring out that we're all just humans, and how do you live your life as a great human while knowing that you have this construct of, Nathan's, hyper aware of this. You have to go to work. You have to provide for your family. You have to pay for your taxes. He had to ready himself for a disaster that he didn't think would come. And thank God he was ready for a disaster. So there's just so many things to think about, but at the same time, and they're materialist in nature, but at the same time, you want to be a good human, and how do you inspire others towards living their life in a positive way where they're not looking to take somebody down. They're not looking to take that shot at somebody. They're looking to kind of like uplift somebody towards, because when someone's lifted up, we're all lifted up. It's that kind of a rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. But I'd like to go to Boston Bia now, who I'm sure if Bia were abducted, she would be holding a Zumba class aboard the ship. How long would that take, Bia, before you would?
I don't know. Just give me an iPod and a speaker.
So they need to abduct you with your phone in order for this to happen.
We need this. Yeah, we need the music.
Okay.
What I thought of, I think there's instincts that we all have that we don't realize we have. Like when Nathan was mentioning about the servicemen and 80 days out in the, when you would expect somebody not to survive that. So I think there are certain instincts that we don't even know we have until we have to use them. Mm-hmm. And I also think that we're not given more than we can handle. So I think that's why some people experience a tougher life versus others. I think there's like a cap somewhere, an invisible cap, because, you see some people and it's like, wow, they've had a really tough life, and others have just had it, what appears to be easier. But I think we have instincts within us that we haven't even tapped into until we're called upon to tap into those.
I agree.
I fully agree. Sorry, go ahead, DJ.
I agree. I had a question for Anthony, but go ahead and finish that thought. Well,
just oh damn it! I think I might have lost my train of thought. Actually, I'm not looking right now, but it was something like, oh no, it's gone.
It's basically gone. Rising to the occasion, of your instincts that you can do accomplish certain tasks to sustain life. Yes.
Thank you. That was helpful. Yes. So, what I was thinking of is how, exactly what you just said in a context that's relevant to this discussion is, when people have an experience, right? They have their first huge, weird, meaning anomalous, paranormal, NHI, whatever UFO experience, totally out of the ordinary for them. and never experienced before, don't know what to do with it, right? Like complete babe in the woods. Yet when we have those experiences, they seem to make us step up in life in a different way. So it's exactly what you just said, you know, that we're confronted with this, whatever it is, could be stress, a stressful situation, war, or whatever's going on, or it could be a weird, anomalous experience. But regardless, until we have that experience, we don't know what's in us that will answer back to what's, you know, what we're being called out to do in that moment. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, people really do step into these weird experiences. They don't always feel like it's happened to them. It's almost like it becomes part of who they are. It becomes part of their life, and then activates a different perspective on life, a different way of being. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing on top of that.
Sure.
A friend of mine yesterday, I don't think she would mind me saying without naming her. She said that we were talking about the whole Trump thing and the release of UFO alien files, and like she expressed this concern, and she was like as an experiencer, she was like, well, part of me is kind of I'm gonna get her words wrong, but part of me feels kind of upset and worried that those of us who have had experiences and have gone through these growth processes that Chenade is talking about, like we've gone through a lot to get to where we are now. And the general public, maybe if there is like a disclosure that happens in any way around these topics that opens them up to it, it's going to happen suddenly for them. And it's almost like she said, I feel like there's a sacredness to being an experiencer that's going to be lost if it happens in this way, especially if it comes out of this administration. That was her concern. And I felt like I understood that, and I get it. And I said, like, part of me feels like maybe what if those of us who have had to go through those journeys as experiencers and that growth process, what if, and mine wasn't that long, mine was just a few years, but others, it's been a lifetime for them. What if we chose to, or had to go through it in this way, like a subset of us, in order to somehow like step up and be there and create that space for others when this does happen? Like, what if that was our purpose as in this role? So that to make it easier for others, so they don't have to go through everything we went through and everything others went through.
Having said that, I mean, there's such a wide variety of experiences too, right? Like there are people that have, Nathan, you referenced this earlier, you know, people who have abduction experiences and it's really awful and traumatizing, right? And it always is awful and traumatizing for them. Like it doesn't change in their mind what their experience is. DJ, fireworks for that? DJ? Fireworks?
No, for Jules coming back, she got her internet back, our chief moderator. She's having storms down there in Alabama.
Like we talked about, parallel realities happening all the time.
That was a perfect example right there. Yeah, there was a point of convergence. But yeah, just, you know, then, so for some people, they have a terrible experience. It remains a terrible experience forever. Other people have a terrible experience. It transforms and becomes a positive experience, like Ray Hernandez's free study showed us, right? That the vast majority of people who have terrifying or scary abduction experiences end up processing it over time and realizing that it was something that benefited them in the long run. And then there's people who only have positive experiences. That's where I come from. So I haven't really struggled. You know, for me, it wasn't like, oh my God, my mind is being blown apart. My life is being blown apart. This is really distressing. What the hell is going on? Or I've been poked and prodded. I have not had that experience. Mine has been really incredible, like absolutely beyond words, incredible. I can't explain it, what it's been like. And so, you know, I think we also need to be aware as we're all going through this, that experiencers, that one word as a blanket statement or blanket term for everyone, cannot be used too casually, because people really do have a huge variety of all kinds of, there are people who've seen trolls and fairies, you know, there are people who've seen UFOs. I mean, it's all over the place. So we have to just relax a little bit, I think, in terms of our own boxes, the boxes that we internally carry around that we want to put things into, never mind the boxes that are made for us by society and culture, like the ones that we create ourselves from our own biases, right? Like let's start there rather than trying to make external stuff happen. That's where I live, is I try to make it happen in myself first, right? Like that's part of how I practice responsibility. Everyone has their own way of doing it, but I mean, I really feel like if I don't address the boxes that are in me, the ways that I condense information, or the ways in which I might unconsciously be judging someone else's experience, if I don't look at that first, you know, can I really be that helpful or useful to myself, to other people, to the community? I'm really just caught up in my own biases, right? So I really feel like personal work, like spiritual work, deep spiritual work, is a very important part of all of this. You know, all the thinking, the conversations, the reading, the events, the nuts and bolts of it are incredibly important too. But ultimately, when I die, I want to know that I did the best I could possibly do during this lifetime. I don't want to be like, right now I know all the 50 classifications of UFOs and the different shapes and sizes. Like, that's not what I want to die thinking about. I want to die knowing that I did the best I possibly could in this life, right? And that means being a spiritual person. To me, that means being a spiritual person, not religious necessarily. Although I think religion does have a place. I am not a fan. I will never be a religious person, but for various reasons that are kind of obvious, I think, to the general public at this point. But I'm not anti-religion, because I think that some people, depending on where they're at with their own spiritual path, that's what works for them. And if it helps you be a better human being and it helps you maintain ethics and morals, I don't have a problem with that. Like, one of my very, very best friends is a Christian. She's the truest Christian I've ever met in my life. She's amazing. She's taught me so much about non-judgment, accepting people who they are, hearing where they're at rather than where I think they should be at. So I don't know. I just feel like we have such a wide, rich variety of tools around us all the time, and we just don't always see them. So I'm always thinking about how much work I can do on myself to change my own perspective and maybe see what's available to me a little better than I did yesterday or last week.
It's really interesting that humans, all of us, on one level of another, because everything is levels. There's levels of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutism is kind of, it almost doesn't exist. And even in saying that, right? Because there are some things that are absolute, harming a child is absolutely, bad. No matter an innocent child. Let me say that. Because if you see one child murdering another and you put him off and you hurt him, then maybe it is. So there's absolutism is very difficult, but we as humans have a need to put ourselves in boxes. So what does that mean? It means that we see a box and we say, I want to view myself along and aligned with those persons that are in that box. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we do at different levels. Some people, I can't go to college without being in a fraternity. I got to be in a fraternity because I want to be able to align myself with these kinds of people. I mean, there's these TV shows about rushing a fraternity now that's totally different than when we were kids, Nathan. I mean, this is like next level. The parents have to buy certain clothes, and there's a whole thing surrounding being part of this group, which to me sounds absurd, but I guess to some people that's their life. To Bia, I want to respond with, in terms of the instinct to make it through something to survive. This is perfectly encapsulated in the television show Alone, which was just shot. I think it actually was shot in 24 in Chenade's native Canada, up in the Arctic Circle, and watching how these amazing people, there was guys and gals that were able to figure out how to survive in this very, very remote area but ultimately every single one of them had this need to be around other humans. And eventually, even when you got down to the last three and then the last two and then the last one, they all had this need to be around. So we've been conditioned, even these people who are great at bushcraft, they can go out there and they built shelters and made fire and were able to trap animals. They were able to fish. They were able to hunt. They were able to do everything they needed to survive. but ultimately they really wanted to be around other humans, and that I found that very interesting, Bia. For Anthony, I have this question. The
Shoot.
source, whatever you consider the source, whatever your name is for that, that entity, why did they create humanity?
Wow, that's a question for me.
That's a
Well,
woman
everybody,
answer. Sorry.
everyone's going to get to answer it. Bia,
Totally have the
Nathan,
answer.
Chenade, you know.
Okay.
But I want to, I don't want to. I want to throw you. I don't want to throw you just a fastball right over the plate.
We've had the
Go
potatoes.
outside
He
a
brought
little
the
bit.
meat now. He's got the full entree.
Yeah, man. Oof. Okay, first off, I have no effing idea.
Well, you have to take a guess. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, like my view on these topics changes almost daily. I want people to understand that, like talking about
Subtle.
absolutism, right?
Yeah.
I think it's important to be fluid like that as you get new information and as you sense things differently and as you grow. So, I mean, for me, I would say right now, I kind of agree with where Nathan was going with that earlier, that source created us and other beings as a way to experience, that it is ultimately non-dual in nature, and it needed some elements of duality to experience. Now I don't know like how directly the creation or the creative process happens. So I personally right now feel like maybe there are other levels of reality through which that creation happens. So maybe it didn't issue like the initial order to create us, but it created something, and then that something created something else, and that created something else, and all of those things. Maybe there's like a co-creative process that also happens in these different layers that are not necessarily hierarchical. So yeah, I think it's all about experience and growth. And yeah, I'll leave it there.
Sounds good. I mean, it's a difficult question. Yeah. Well done, Boston Bia. Why do you think the source, some people refer to that as God. Some people have a different name for them. There's no necessarily wrong name. Why do you think it created humanity?
I think there's a life cycle. I think everything has a life cycle. So I think just as animals have, a certain life cycle, us humans can't. We're all given a task. We were created to come here to perform your task, whatever it may be. And then just like everything, it has to come to an end. So I think we're here to experience. We're here to learn. And when our job here is done, then our life ends and goes beyond.
Yeah, I agree. I think we are going to go beyond. I'm wondering what's going to happen in the next one, Nathan. What do you think about the creator, the sauce, as they might say up in Boston, the sauce?
Is it the red sauce or the white sauce?
It's the sauces, by the
Well,
way,
for the
DJ.
Chinese restaurant, it's the brown or the white. But no, if we're going Italian, yeah, the red sauce, I would say.
It's the sauces, by the
The
way.
sauces, to be clear. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really, this is the paradox, I think, right? The non-duality, it is paradoxical. I mean, because I think I try hard to come up with metaphors that make sense for me, but they're always lacking something, right? They're always lacking some element of clarity that I just can't quite seem to concretize. But the way I think about it is that there is one thing, there is one intelligence that is literally the sum of everything is the one thing. But if you try to imagine, and I think your illustration, DJ, about alone, and when you're out there and you're by yourself in the wilderness, there's this isolation to that oneness that is, it's very lonely, right? It's lacking. It is everything, but at the same time it lacks, right? And so the one thing that the image that helps me think about this in a way is, and this came from my own psychedelic experience, but imagine if you were in a room and it was a domed room, and it was just you, and you were in that room for a very long time, to where such a long time you didn't really know how much time had passed, and you began having a difficult ability to distinguish between you and the room itself. Like there's just no barrier. It's like there's nothing but that. And after a while, you probably just get so frustrated that you kind of you cry out with that frustration. And in that cry, in that expression, the room like reverberates back, right? So like you start getting these echoes off the dome, and the echoes off the dome, because you've been so isolated for so long, they sound like other people. They sound like other intelligences, right? So you've in a way kind of tricked yourself into thinking that there are these other intelligences with you, and this reverberation process continues happening over and over and over again, kind of like sound waves, bouncing back and forth off this room and intersecting with each other and forming new sound patterns. And this is just this creative process then kind of emerges. So so to answer your original question, how do we get created or were we created? It's sort of an emergent thing. It comes from source itself. And I liked how Anthony put it too. There's a co-creative quality to it. So as sort of intelligences emerge, they then have an interplay with one another, and that creates new intelligences. It's a byproduct of the interactions, right? So it's this really beautiful thing. And I think we think about it too in a linear way. It's like, well, there's the Big Bang, and there's this, and there's this, and then this. But I don't really think that our conception of that is probably incorrect. It's not a linear thing. It's happening all the time, everywhere, all at once. Like it's everything and nothing all at the same time, all at once. And that's really difficult for our brains to conceive of. But I want to finish with this, and coming back to something we talked about just a minute ago about experiencers and things. And I think that a superpower is the ability to treat any encounter with another person as an experience, right? Mm-hmm. And it's an invitation to experience their life, right? And so when you encounter anybody, whether you're having a good day or a bad day, that's an invitation to kind of live through their experience in the shared moment that you have together. And it's not to say you can't be who you are. You've got to be yourself and be authentic in who you are in that moment. But you're also invited, sometimes whether we want to be invited or not, we're invited into the experience of the other person. And we can choose. We can choose to see that and acknowledge that and go, wow, like this is really amazing. Like I'm encountering another intelligence, outside of my own, and we're having an interaction. Like that's really cool. But we're kind of like numb to that now. We're just very like, this is just what we do. We have, we have podcasts, we have people out in the world. We have families. It's, it's all so mundane, and we lose that magic, but I think it's there to us all the time. And so I bring that up because I think we've tended to use the phrase experiencer in some circles as kind of like a VIP card. And then in other circles as a cudgel, right? So in other circles, it can be, you're not an experiencer. So if you're not, I need you to, and that it can be very dangerous. So it's just something I want us to think about, because I think truly at the root of it all, we are all experiencers of something amazing. Yes. And we just have to choose to see it in that way.
Yes.
Totally.
So beautifully said. I 100% agree with everything you just said. I have nothing to add. That was
Nathan's amazing at this kind of stuff. One of the things that's interesting that Jesse Michaels brings up often, and it may have been in his conversation with Joe Rogan, but it doesn't seem like it was happenstance that this planet was created that has water, and we need water to sustain all life, that is a certain distance from the sun to be able to, at least for this epoch here, to create a climate in which civilizations could flourish and progress could be made, and it wouldn't be like a 1,000-year. I mean, we don't know how old the planet is. I mean, we're in the millions of years, right? But that there would be a stretch that was long enough for us to create this, and not an ice age, or look like from that Star Wars movie, from The Empire Strikes Back, the ice planet where we'd all be in like some sort of a bunker. So it's very interesting that this all happened, and it seemed intentional to create this kind of evolution of beings on this planet that was perfectly placed, that had a perfect climate, perfect distance from the sun, all these things that would sustain life that at least we're not perceiving at this point. But I don't think our vision goes all that far. There's a lot of things that are blocking our vision from seeing, you know, everything that's out there, not to mention, you know, the thousands of satellites that are in orbit, not to mention those. So yeah, it seems like intentional, but for what reason is anybody's
Can I
guess?
provide a
Please.
devil's advocate to that?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So I totally like I just want to say that like there are some other ideas that I think are interesting, and something was coming to me as you were saying that. Like if you look at simulation hypothesis and those types of theories. So let's say, for example, like put ourselves in our reality right now, and you know, we have AI, we have virtual reality. Let's look at virtual reality, for example. Let's say someone develops this amazing virtual reality video game, and everyone on Earth can access it, right? And it's this like beautiful, green, lush, perfectly placed world. Everything is perfectly aligned for us to have the experience that we're having here on Earth, from your example. And over time, because of developments or advances, and maybe how much time people spend there, the humans who are spending their times there through these avatars forget that they're actually from a higher reality that is much more diverse and has all of these different humans, different cultures, different traditions. And now they're all experiencing it in this one VR world, this reality, as this one type of being. I think that's a possibility here. I think there are so many other possible like levels to reality beyond the physicalist universe where Earth is perfectly placed. And these other things seem to seep in sometimes and interact with us in a strictly non-physical way, or a non-strictly physical way. So I think that's interesting. And that's why I'm always like, all options are on the table. I have no idea.
I've said since the beginning of the show that when people try to define reality, you can really only do that for yourself. You can't define someone else's reality or what reality is, because that portends that you know. And there's so much that we don't know. And kind of like Young Black Economist, you mentioned about the abductions, and you sort of didn't believe in them. People didn't believe it. I mean, if I went back, 20 years, people thought the idea of UFOs was absurd. They don't think it's absurd now because there's been evidence that's been put out, and very highly placed government officials that have said it is. So people say that there are people in the UFO community that think Bigfoot is real. And we've interviewed a number of people that said, no, I absolutely saw this creature standing right in front of me. And so did he or her. So daytime class A sighting. So again, that's kind of defining reality in a way, saying, here's another thing that happens all the time. And it goes back to something that Chenade said when of what this is like. It's like this or it's like that. I have heard Bigfoot experiencers say, oh, people say that they have a conical head, but no, I saw a round head. Okay, so you saw a round head. Does that mean that Chenade over there didn't see a creature like the Californian Bluff Creek Patty that had a conical head? And well, I saw one had more of an ape-like face. And then one said, well, people say I've seen an ape-like face, but the one, it looked like Native American, which is really hairy. So we can't define what Bigfoots look like. That's regional. Like in Canada, where you come from, they're much bigger because the game is much bigger, right? They're eating, elk that weigh, 800 pounds. And the deer in Central Florida is probably like a 300-pound deer or less, so I think people, just get too caught up in their definitions. But I think what we'd close with today is to close with Chenade's experience, because we didn't get to hear that. And I'm sure the audience will really love that. So please go ahead with that.
Oh, thank you. Oh my God. Okay. So I still have difficulty putting this into a synopsis because I've just had so many experiences since I was about 4. That's my earliest memory of having had an unusual experience where that age was actually pretty pivotal for me. There were a number of significant things that happened that I think kind of cracked me open to another reality. But when I was 4, that's the only scary experience I ever had. And I don't think it was actually scary. I think it was just, I was 4, I was a child, I didn't know what was going on. The energy was absolutely enormous. And there was a being behind me in my bed, which of course is very unusual. So I got scared. But then I started to, in my childhood, I was very sensitive. And I had a lot of experiences with ESP, future vision. You know, I would remote view my Christmas presents. I would, the phone would ring and I would know who was calling, and I would say it to myself before my parents picked up the phone. And then they would say, "Oh, hi, Susan," or whatever. And I would know that I had been right. So I would do these little experiments, but I never told anybody about them. I never shared with anyone that I was having all these experiences because I didn't know how to share it. I didn't know that I should share it. There was no, it just didn't occur to me. I didn't have the language for it. I just didn't think of it, you know? And so I had all these unusual experiences all the way through my childhood, which were psychic, ESP, intuition, not beings necessarily, except for that one when I was 4. Anyway, then grew up, went through stuff like we all do, became disconnected from myself, severely disconnected from myself, and ended up in my late 30s at a point where I was just really depressed and really unhappy, and had left my fiance, had, you know, gotten completely burned out of my job. I was a special needs educator for over 20 years with students of all ages, and I've only ever worked with children since I was 11 years old. Burned out from my job, you know, had always loved working with kids. And now all of a sudden I was running out of patience with them, and I was dreading going to work every day. And mostly I was just feeling like, how the hell did I get here? Like, how did my life turn out like this? Why am I so unhappy? I thought I was doing everything right. You know, I really thought that I was doing life okay. And that crisis point seemed like, even though I was not involved in any of this at all, like I did not know that UFOs were a thing. I was not thinking about UFOs. I was not thinking about extraterrestrials. I figured they were probably real because logic, you know, the universe is huge, but I wasn't thinking about it. It was not part of my life. I was not hanging out with spiritual people. I was not going to spiritual events. I wasn't reading about spirituality. It was, I can't even emphasize this, it was not a part of my life. I was very firmly in the 3D. And so this crisis point seemed to be kind of like an invitation to something to start helping me with a thought that started to cycle through my mind as I was going through this crisis point, which was, I have to get back to how I was as a child. I have to get back to how I was as a child. I have to get back to how I was as a child. And even though I didn't really know why that was important, I just felt with a huge amount of intensity that this was important. So I just started kind of getting help. And I can't explain how that happened, because at the time I was not very aware, and I was not documenting it, and I was dismissing a lot of the things that happened. But essentially, I feel like I was kind of, it's as if there were little breadcrumbs in the forest that I was finding and following, right? And then I ended up going to Peru, which was not a place I had ever intended to go. That's a whole story in itself. Just getting to Peru is a very anomalous story. But essentially, it seemed like the red carpet just kind of rolled out in front of me to go to Peru. When I went, I had never taken any psychedelics at all in my life. I'd been too anxious. I had been too sensitive and too afraid of losing control, which I thought would happen if I took any kind of drugs or psychedelics. So I was always the responsible one in my friend group, you know, who would drive everybody home and make them soup and stuff if they weren't well. So I decided I was going to go to Peru to take ayahuasca. And so this was the first psychedelic I'd ever experienced. Just went straight for the mothership. And the first 2 nights, we were supposed to take it for 3 nights. The first 2 nights, absolutely nothing happened. I was calling out, asking for something to come. I really needed help. Like, I was very depressed. I was very disconnected from myself. I was really like, dark night of the soul. What the hell is my life for? Why am I here? What is the purpose for all of this? I don't understand why human beings behave this way. I don't understand why the planet is like this. I can't live like this anymore. I need something to give. That was my feeling. And so the third night, I met extraterrestrials. It was an absolutely enormous experience. I was welcomed home. That was the experience, was that I was being welcomed back home. These beings were my family. They were made out of light. There was a huge amount of love, like indescribable feeling of love, and a whole bunch of other things, and communication. Like, you chose to be here. We want you to know that we see you. We're with you, like this kind of stuff. But after having had that experience, I couldn't make any sense of it, didn't know where to put it, because I was not involved in this field whatsoever. I just thought that I had made that up, right? I thought I had created it. But what I couldn't let go of was, why had I created that? Why had I created an experience for myself of something that I did not think about, that was not part of my life, that I didn't think I had any interest in, right? And why was it so potent? And why did it stay with me for weeks afterwards? I just could not shake it, So came back from Peru, had wild synchronicities. I mean, wild. Like, I knew at that point, okay, something is going on. That's when I really started to realize that I started to meet my paranormal self again. I started to meet how I was when I was a child. And then almost 2 years later, almost to the day, I was here in my living room, practically where I am right now, and was recovering. I'm deaf, so I have 2 cochlear implants. That's how I hear. And I had my second cochlear implant surgery, and I was recovering from it. It's a very big deal. They cut your head open and go into your inner ear system and implant something.
Wow.
Right? So you're recovering for quite a while afterwards. And I was dizzy for 2 weeks, couldn't do anything. And after 2 weeks, I was so bored. And again, it was this kind of calling out process, which I didn't realize I was doing. But I called out loud by myself in my living room, I cannot watch another Hollywood movie. Like, I need something else to do, right? Something else. I need my brain to wake up. I just felt really cabin fevery and kind of sludgy after having been on the couch for 2 weeks. So I stumbled upon Jeremy Corbell's documentary, Bob Lazar in Area 51, and had some vague understanding that, Area 51 was an interesting place and something had happened there, but that was it. And I watched the film. I had a huge response to it. Like, my whole system, my body, my mind, my emotions, my intuition, everything lit up like a Christmas tree. There were goosebumps all over my body. And I was observing myself also having this experience.
Really?
Which was interesting. Yeah. It wasn't like an out of body thing, but it was almost like a part of me was over here watching myself, thinking, wow, I'm having a really strong reaction to this. Why am I having such a strong reaction to this? And believing Bob Lazar right away, just felt like he was telling the truth, that this was real. There really were UFOs. Oh my God. Right. And seeing this content for the first time in my life. So blew my mind, turned off the film. And right after I turned off the film, these 3 beings made of light arrived in my living room. And that was by far the biggest experience, because I was just at home in the middle of the day, no ayahuasca, psychedelics, or anything else involved, just recovering from surgery. And there they were. And it was absolutely, I can't describe it. I really can't. It was like it's like those experiences that you hear about of people meeting angels or having a holy vision of some kind and feeling this sort of universal sense of love that is beyond the human capacity to understand, and a universal wisdom and a universal power. It was just staggering. And they gave me pretty much the same kind of messages as I had gotten in Peru, but with a lot more vehemence. Because in Peru, they had said to me, this is your invitation. And then 2 years later, they were saying, okay, now it's time for you to get going. Like, you have work to do. You agreed to be here, right? Like, Nathan, you were talking about contracts. This is the first I'd ever heard of something like this. I was not in this field, right? So I'm just listening to these beings and having this experience. I was in another place. Like, there was no time. My sense of visual perception was completely different. Everything was completely different. And that completely changed me. Literally everything about me, everything about how I saw life, how I saw reality, everything I thought and felt, it just changed immediately overnight. I could not ever go back to how I had been. 2 weeks later, I'm starting a job, and I asked for proof and from the beings, because the contrast of starting this job, considering what I had just had happen, was so jarring that I asked for proof, and they gave me proof. They made it happen in front of me. I've told this story before on other podcasts. But because they proved it to me in a way that for me was absolutely undeniable, it was physical. The proof was in front of me in the form of booklets that I was marking as part of my job. I just will never doubt that. I will never doubt them again. I'll never doubt any of these experiences ever again. It was just too unbelievable. And so they continue to show up. I have an ongoing relationship with them. There's other beings that have come in. There's different kinds of things that are happening all the time. My abilities have absolutely come back, and they're just expanding exponentially. It's really kind of fascinating. So the latest thing to have happen is I can do evidential mediumship. I did not study it. It's just happening. So I think, this is something will happen with people. The more you're on the path of spiritual development and consciousness, and you work on yourself, and you become more and more, I guess, unfettered over time by what confines us, right, in our ability to be wholly and authentically who we are. The more I work on those and shake them off the best that I can, the more stuff is just happening. And so the latest was, Anthony knows about this, like 3 weeks ago, this experience that would take too long to tell you. But it was a spirit basically made me go and visit her mom, who lives about 10 minutes away from me. I had never met her before, and went to the house, and it was just extraordinary. I mean, these things are so real, but again, it's that experiential side. You can do all the reading about it and all the watching of the podcasts and learn a lot. But for me, it's really all about the experience. That's where so much knowing comes from. Yeah. So I think I'll stop there. I don't want to go on for too long.
That's really amazing. And now you found your path as a result of that experience in Peru, and then seeing, and this kind of tangential connection to UFOs. And now that, seeing Jeremy's documentary. So, wow. This has been, I don't know, Nathan, I think you did pretty good. I like these two.
Thanks, man.
They're pretty awesome.
Yeah. And they did it for free, which is really incredible.
I mean, you have to pay you to.
Well, hey, I'm expecting $25,000 tomorrow, though.
Yeah. Oh, we did have the breadsticks, though. We still have.
That's what I was gonna say. There was a lot of food mentions here.
Yeah,
Not cool.
The breadsticks. Yeah.
And
no, but you guys are welcome back anytime. This has been a blast.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you, having us on, and great questions. Wonderful, wonderful conversation. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. We feel the same. So let's go with Cabby goodbyes, starting with Boston Bia.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your experiences. So not just your story, but your experiences with us. And, it was definitely a great conversation. Thank you for coming on. And it was a great time. Thank you.
Thank you.
The money man, known as Money Nathan.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys so much for saying yes to the show. And I mean that. You guys are welcome back anytime. It felt like a really natural conversation, which is what you want in a podcast, is just it flows, and it flowed so well. And that's who you guys are. You're authentic, and I appreciate that about y'all. You're not coming with alternative agendas, and you're trying to be your whole self in the community, and that's really commendable. I think there's an unfortunate thing that happens often in the community when you get too much attention and you start kind of having to play a role, and people expect that role, and it's just unfortunately the way that things are. And I really appreciate you guys for not stepping into that you're just bringing your whole self, and you're committed to doing that over and over and over again. And you're doing it because you love what you're doing. You're here you're here because you want to be here. You're not here to chase a dollar. You're not here to chase recognition. You're here for the right reasons, and that's really important. And I do think as well that just like Sinead, in your experience, when things showed up at just the right time, we have those moments in our lives where we are showing up at just the right time for somebody else that needs that. And so I would encourage us to keep doing that and be attentive, and our audience too to be doing that as well. The more people that can do that, the better off we'll all be. So again, thanks for coming on, and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Yeah, I'll also echo and kind of tack on to what Nathan said. When you come into content creation, it is very easy to lose yourself and who you are, and your values become skewed as a result of chasing something or chasing an expectation that colleagues have, or a competitiveness, all this kind of really stupid stuff, instead of just, it's kind of like when you stand up there in front of a yoga class, if you're trying to mimic someone that you just took teacher training with, well, then everybody is going to see that you are trying to replicate because they know that teacher, and they're like, oh, well, DJ is saying the same thing that person's saying. But if you just be your authentic self with all those influences that you have, the best of you will come out. And obviously that's what's happened with your show. And I think that's the key to longevity, is when you don't feel that you're looking at the metrics every day, trying to see this, that, and the other thing. So congratulations. And I hope we get to have you back on Cab again, because I feel like we certainly have much more to discuss. So,
Agree.
Namaste. And
Thank
by
you
the
so
way,
much,
Bia
guys.
says I'm going through a midlife crisis. We'll discuss that next on the Cab chat, Nathan. All right.
Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, I'd encourage anyone check out our channels, Fire in the Cosmos, everywhere, and we have a lot of more cool episodes coming up very soon. So stay tuned. Awesome.
Yeah, we just thank you, Kat Randall, for doing that. Thank you very much. We've had so many people donating memberships lately, and what you'll see, everybody, you'll see all the information that Anthony and Chenade have on their YouTube channel will be in the show notes for the podcast, and I will paste them into the YouTube description. So on behalf of Boston Bia, Money Nathan, Debs, and also Courtney, who's on the slope somewhere. Maybe it's in Canada. Maybe it's in Whistler. It should be in Whistler, right? Shouldn't it, Sinead? Where else do you want to be?
Whistler. I thought she skied in Alaska, personally. I mean, they've got so much snow up there.
But she should be in Whistler, because it just seems like a cool place.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah.
Peace out. One love, everybody. And we will see you down the road.